All right, here we are, Self-Made Millionaire Tips. I'm Colin Plume, CEO of Noble Gold Investments, My Digital Money, partner in a new hot sauce that I'm going to get into in another podcast. So I'm kind of diverging a little bit from my norm, and I got a very special guest, Joe Altieri, here with Flex Screen. You probably saw him on Shark Tank. One of and as I did more research on Shark Tank, Joe, I was surprised that people don't. They get the offer and it looks like the deal's going through, and then many times a high percentage, that deal never gets to the end, right? It never actually finishes on a lot of people. Is that true?
It is, and there's somewhere, I think it's somewhere in 50 to 60% don't close.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people this all the time, like Shark Tank, imagine that being a conversation at lunch and you jot down some deal points on a napkin, and then you shake hands and go, let's be in business together.
Right.
That's pretty much what Shark Tank is. Like it's, you're not really negotiating. You're not really getting into the meat of what does this look like to work together.
Sure.
That work comes, in the months after the show.
So how long did it take to actually ink the deal with Lori? When did it actually get signed from that show that you were on?
So we shot in June. We aired in early January, and I think we closed, if I remember correctly, somewhere beginning in December. So it took 4 or 5 months to really get to, and the deal looked completely different than what was on the show.
Oh,
again, I'm not supposed to say that, but that's the reality of it is, sometimes circumstances change. Or hey, there's just a better way. As you start doing the negotiation, you're like, look, we've come to this impasse here with the deal that we thought we wanted to do during the time on the show, but here's another way that we can both say yes. And so we took a little bit of a left turn, and it worked out well. So
okay,
she's
good.
actually an equity partner of FlexRoom. So we finished our deal.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Loaded question. Do you ever wish that the deal didn't go through, or that you didn't get any offers? Because as I've watched the show over the years, you see some of these, where they deny it, they don't go forward, like Ring, was a classic one. Is that something that you ever wish, or do you think it went the right way for you in your business?
I think it went the right way for me. If you don't close your deal, you don't get there's some benefits to closing the deal. The as seen on Shark Tank, that's a trademark of Sony Pictures. Okay. And so if you don't finish your deal with the shark, you don't get the access to that. So there's that. There's also a tremendous amount of recognition for all of the sharks, that when you have them when you actually have them as a partner, whether it's a big partner, a small partner, active or non-active, there's something about having Lori as one of my partners that it does open some doors. And so that's, like I said, I personally think that it's been great. She's not all that engaged in the day-to-day of our business, which is good as well. Some companies need somebody like Mr. Wonderful or somebody to go in and kick their butts because they're just not doing a good job with the business. But for us, we were already pretty well established, and so.
Yeah, I mean, from watching the show, it was like you're growing every year in terms of sales. Seemed like the big issue that they thought was a big issue, and who knows, is that they want more profit, right? That sure. But you thought, like, my gut is you were like, let's be very affordable and scale, right? Was that your strategy, Joe?
It was, and keep in mind, the 15 minutes that you saw on the show is as dramatized as the producers can possibly make it with the 2.5 hours of content that we actually shot, right? So that's right. So you have to consider that as well. Like if there's no drama, they don't have a good show.
Yeah.
Right? So they're doing the negatives, they're doing the gotcha moments where they zoom in on your face and they do all of that stuff.
Right.
But it is a I don't want to say it's a fictitious representation of what happened in there. But it is a dramatized version of what happened in there. There's again, we shot, and this is very unusual. Most people that shoot, if you have and they prepare you for this. Like, hey, if you have a good pitch, you're going to be in there for about 40, 45 minutes. If you have a bad pitch, you'll be in there for 20 or 25. Because we were a little bit of a bigger and established company, and there was a lot of moving parts with the way that we created our business. I was in there for 2 hours and 37 minutes.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a lot of boring crap that happened during that time,
Yeah,
where they understand reinvesting. They understand, like, these people are they're there for a reason.
right.
They're very intelligent people. They're very good business people. They're good personalities too. I mean, they have, they have the personalities for TV, but they know what you're doing. But the
Sure.
sound bites that the producers take out are going to be the ones that feel, either really good or really bad,
Sure.
because they're there for the ratings. That's why they do this.
And I think they made you kind of look nervous a bit, which it's hard for me to think you seem so it's hard for me to think. So, but now it makes sense. 2.5 hours, they found one little clip where you kind of, maybe you didn't say something perfect, and they threw that in to make it seem, they don't want to make it seem like it's a total slam dunk kind of early on in the pitch, right? I mean, they want to make it seem like there's some drama, but I mean, from the outside looking in, like, they knew this business was going to be successful. There was no doubt about it.
Yeah. And I do want to preface this is it was the scariest thing I've ever done. So I was definitely, nervous.
You were, okay.
I mean, there's a lot leading up to it. So Shark Tank reached out to us. They asked us to be on the show, but you still have to go through a lot of steps to get on there. Mm-hmm. And then, then you have this whole, like, by the time an episode gets through all of the different stages, between the primetime spots, and then the streaming, and then the replays and all that stuff, it's somewhere around 30 million people that see your episode. That's a lot of pressure, knowing that, good or bad, 30 million people, which is a big portion of the population, is going to see what you say. Mm-hmm. And you can crash and burn, like most people do. Most people go on that show and get embarrassed. So there's a lot of pressure leading up to it, and it doesn't help. Like, the walk down the hall, that's exactly what happens. So you have this, like, and then you go out, and there's a spot on the floor. There's a dot, and you can't see it from the show, but there's a dot on the floor. And when you walk out, you have to stand there, and it takes them about 2.5 minutes, where you're standing there with nothing you're not allowed to say anything. You're looking at the sharks are looking at you. You're looking at the sharks are looking at you. Right? And
stare down at the corral.
It is. And what they're doing is they're getting all of those, like, those zoom in shots and stuff like that. That isn't happening in real time. Like, when they show it in the show, they're actually doing a lot of those ahead of time
before. Yeah.
And so you have that now, now you're like, 2 minutes of staring at the sharks. So you have a lot of nervous energy, but by about 20 minutes in, like, once you're through the "Hi Sharks, my name's Joe Altieri from," like, once you're through all of that, and then you're talking about your business, I got really comfortable really fast. So I wasn't nervous when it came down to the, hey, let's make a deal type of stuff. But there was a lot of nervous energy leading up to it, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. And let's take a step back, and let's just talk about, I know you're in the window business, which I know some people in the window business, friends of mine, that there's a lot of money to be made in that business, and you got presented a problem, and that's how you came up with the idea for Flex Screen. Tell me how that opportunity sort of came to you, and what kind of drove you to create this, kind of seems like an invention that should have been there before. I'm sort of surprised it hasn't been around, but what made you kind of tweak it and decide, let's make this flexible and kind of go in this direction?
Yeah. And to start with your last comment first, I was really surprised when we did the patent search and there wasn't anything out there. I mean, there were some, obscure things that were kind of sort of, that we had to write around. But as far as a flexible window screen for a window, there was just nothing out there. Wow. And so it was the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we can actually get a patent on this.
Yeah. But, right. You're like, who's going to sue me later? Right.
I know. I'm telling you, that was exactly what was going through my mind. Like, yeah, somebody's coming out of the woodwork that we just haven't found. But yeah, I mean, I was an independent sales rep in the window and door industry. So I sold pieces and parts. I sold glass and hardware and all of those types of things to the window manufacturers. And one of the things that I sold was window screens. So most window manufacturers don't make their own screens. In our industry, there's two large companies that supply most of the window screens to the US. Mm-hmm. I was an independent rep for one of them. And so I was the frontline guy. I was in there, and my job was to convince, a window manufacturer that was producing their own screens that they should outsource it, and I'll show you how I can save you money, right? And so as the frontline guy, I would get inundated with all of the problem calls from my customers, because it's amazing. People will put up with issues with a product when they're making it themselves and say, oh, that's just the product. It's just the product, just the product. It is what it is, right? Painted aluminum screens, they scratch and dent and they get damaged easy and all that stuff. As soon as they outsource it, suddenly they're like, you need to do better at this because, you're a terrible person because you can't do better than I did on this on this product. And so I was just sick of the calls about how poorly the industry liked painted aluminum window screens, that's what most window screens are in the world, or and so I just started messing around in my garage. It was a hobby. I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm going to try to mess around with trying to come up with a new type of window screen that doesn't get damaged as easy. I'm going to pull your truck out. She had a Yukon XL at the time. I'm going to pull your Yukon out of the garage and put it in the driveway. But don't worry, it'll only be like 2 weeks, right? 2.5 years later, I had this really ugly prototype for what now what Flex Screen has become. And it wasn't supposed to be, in my head, it wasn't flexible. It wasn't like any of these things. Those are all ancillary to what I was trying to accomplish, which was to make it more damage resistant. The flexible, was really because of the raw materials that I was using to get to that point. They were flexible. So I was using spring steel was one of the raw materials that I was experimenting with, and that's what ended up, Flex Screen ended up being. But I had tried everything, fiberglass and different composite materials and foams and anything to make a window screen.
Right.
And so the flexibility part of it and some of the other attributes that we talk about were secondary, but they've become great tools for us in our belt as we're trying to convert window manufacturers and the industry away from traditional screens. So but yeah, it was just I came up with this really ugly prototype, and because I was in the industry, I didn't invent something in the auto industry, which I wouldn't have any contacts. It would take me a lot longer. I just went out to some of my customers and said, first of all, sign this NDA, right? Which was the first thing. I got everybody to sign NDAs. But then when I went out and showed it to them, I mean, the overwhelming response was, build it and we will come. And so, when that started happening, it became, I don't want to say easy for me to make the decision to kind of go all in on this, but it made it easier to start putting real money towards it. Up to this point, it was, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. But when I finally had the prototype, now it was like, okay, let's spend a lot of money on IP. You know what I mean? Let's start and at that point, what I considered a lot of money, let's start putting thousands of dollars into patent searches and things like that.
And you were self-funding the whole thing the whole time?
Yes, up to that point. Yeah.
Okay. And then you realize, okay, I got something here. But you were initially, you were going to sell it to the window manufacturers. So you were going B2B initially. Is that right? Was your kind of out of the door strategy?
Yes. Yep. And yeah, so when we opened up our first manufacturing plant, yeah, we had no intention of selling retail at all. And still retail is a small portion of our overall sales, but we've again, through Shark Tank and all that stuff, the retail side has really exploded, but the rest of Flex Screen has exploded even faster. So the retail has stayed a small portion of our income.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the DIY is what everybody sees on TV, but it's still not as big of a group as, actually professionals that are doing most of the work, I would assume. And so that it makes sense that you're still, Shark Tank probably blew up, got you out in the public, and now all these manufacturers are like, yeah, we need it, we want it, we got to have it, kind of thing.
Exactly. And we've gotten into a new portion of our business where over the last year, we've started licensing our technology to the window manufacturers. So up to that point, if you wanted a screen, you had to buy it from one of our manufacturing plants. And we had multiple manufacturing, and we still do multiple manufacturing plants across the US. because we're a just-in-time supplier to the window manufacturer. So if a window manufacturer is making windows today, they need their screens today as well. So we had to be close to them geographically with very short lead times.
Got it.
So now we have started licensing, and we worked with an equipment manufacturer that came up with an automated flex screen line. So it's touted as the fastest window screen line in the world. It just makes screens. It makes our product faster than you can make, a lot faster, like like 10 times faster than you can make a traditional screen. So now the cost to a window manufacturer has gone down, and we can still we charge them a royalty. They get to make screens faster, cheaper, and now they can have our product, which is seen in our industry as a premium product. So that's all within the past year. We've made this pretty big shift in our business model, but that going forward, that will be our core business, is the technology side of our company, not necessarily the manufacturing side.
So you're going to get away from the manufacturing side. Just it's complicated probably to be in so many states and to do it. And so you're just going to charge a royalty, let them, build it in the state that they are, and then you collect, whatever premium you guys charge or whatever fee you guys charge for that licensing.
Yeah, in a perfect world, we'd be able to shut the doors on all the manufacturing. But the reality is that's years and years and years away. There's a strategy there that we're going to have to get to make that happen. So our manufacturing isn't going away, but the more money and that we can make from the technology side, from the royalty side, mailbox money is a lot easier than manufacturing money. Absolutely, it is a lot easier.
Yeah, and labor costs skyrocketing in this country, and just overall, and just lack of people that know how to do this kind of work, right? I mean, even that, I read some statistic that they say in like the construction business, which is not the same, but people that know how to work with their hands, for every 7 people that leave construction, only 1 new one comes in. So there's just this exodus of people that want to do real labor and real work in this country. And so I'm sure they've already had the manufacturing, they already have to do the windows. Just letting them do the work and getting it out probably makes a lot of sense for you as a business owner.
It does, and it allows us to grow. It allows us to scale instead of grow, right? So there's a big difference there. Scaling is essentially growth without adding resources, right? That's like we want to scale. If we were relying on our own manufacturing, we can only grow at a certain clip. And every time I want to grow, I have to put out a ton of money. I have to put out a ton of resources to get more market share. Now I can grab market share, and it costs me really next to nothing as far as resources go. Right. So huge difference. Like we're the market share that we will have this time next year, because of the licensees that have already signed up and they're just waiting on their equipment now. It would take us the next 5 years to get to that same market share. Wow. And we're doing it in 1 year. And wow. and the snowball is getting bigger faster, but by this time in 2 years, we will, it would have taken us 10 years to get to that point. It's wow. We're able to scale a lot faster with this strategy.
It's amazing. Was this how did you come to this strategy? Did someone recommend this to you, or is it just sort of was the natural, this is where you knew things were going to go?
We had a pretty good idea. One of my investment partners owns IP in a completely unrelated industry, and this is how he scaled it. It has to do with like cement forms and things like that, and his IP he actually licensed out to like preform cement guys, right? And so he was able to scale his business very, very quickly. Over the past several years with us, we didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the process, the manufacturing process down to the point where somebody would want to license off of us. Right. So now that we worked with an automation company to come up with the equipment, we kind of got to where we wanted to be. So it was like one of those it's a 10-year overnight success type of things. We're like, oh, of course this is what you're doing. Yeah. I'm sure you always knew you were going to do that. We're like, sure. Well, yeah, it took us a long time to get there. Yeah. So it was always an idea that we wanted to do. It was just, a couple of very fortunate things that we had to be opportunistic about. And luckily we were, that got us to where we are with the licensing side.
Yeah. Joe, how has your, like, from when you got it before the show and after, tell me some of the things that's like you never would believe, because I know people that get on the show. I mean, everyone on my staff saw your show before we even discussed doing this today. So can you give me some of the kind of like out of body experiences you've had since you've been on Shark Tank?
Well, one, and this is funny. I don't know if you have children or not, but I have daughters. I have three daughters. I have four kids, but three of them are daughters. And we were going somewhere. We were actually flying out of the country, and we flew from Pittsburgh down to Orlando. And in the Orlando parking, or in the Orlando airport, somebody like ran up from across the parking lot, because I had my hat on and like all that stuff, and they're like, "You're Joe from Shark Tank, aren't you?" My daughter's like, "Oh my God, Dad, I can't believe this is happening. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, you are so embarrassing." I'm like, "Trust me, girls, it could be embarrassing for a lot of other reasons. This is this is best case scenario for you."
Yeah.
So things like that happen, which is really cool. Dealing with Lori and her team has been pretty cool. We had a meeting with a large window manufacturer the other day, and Lori happened, she was able to come in on a Teams meeting with them. So there's those types of things are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We were really lucky, and again, man, this is terrible to say this, but we were lucky through COVID. Our episode aired right as everything was getting shut down. Like, it was like first week of January we aired, and then like literally like 3 weeks later everything started shutting down, right? NBA games, hockey, all this stuff was starting to be canceled. So they started running Shark Tank reruns from that season on primetime. So we had I think 4 primetime spots in the first year, which you get one. That's it. Like you get your one and done. Then you're on CNBC for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so that was pretty awesome to have have that on primetime over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, to get 4 10-minute commercials that is praising your business. I mean, I spent a lot of money on marketing, and I could tell you that how much 60 seconds costs on prime time.
Oh, I know.
And so, we're talking, thousands and thousands, depending on which program and the impressions. So to get 4 where you're right there. And obviously you're very like, people connect to you. I think that's why part of the reason you had such great, I think the product's great too, but I think it seemed very approachable and like more of a regular guy. And, I think also on the show, like sometimes people try to overcomplicate their business, and I think your business, you just kind of, here's a product, here it is, this is what I want. And it was just kind of a straight shooter approach, which I think people really, gravitated towards.
Yeah. And to your point, we had a consultant, because when Sony Pictures puts a contract in front of you, it is a take it or leave it contract. Like we put it in front of our lawyers, and our lawyers are like, "Yeah, I wouldn't sign this."
Don't ever sign that. He was redlining. Your lawyer's like redlining half the document. Yeah.
I mean, there was just like stuff like, if you break the confidentiality, because from June until 2 weeks before I aired, it has to be 100% confidential. Like if you go out there and you sign, it's like a guaranteed judgment of at least $1 million, right? So there's like, if you do something stupid, you post on, "I can't wait to be on Shark Tank."
Yeah.
Like they're coming after you.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
But we had a consultant come in, because again, we have this, crazy contract in front of us that's protecting Sony, 100% protecting Sony. Sure. Like I don't fault them for putting this in front of us. They one of the misconceptions back in the first couple years, the producers or Sony or whoever would get a piece of your company if you went on there. That went away. So there's none of that anymore. I don't know if you had heard that, but
no, I never.
Yeah. So back in the day, I think it was the executive producer would get a cut. So if you did a deal with a shark, you would get a cut. And Mark Cuban led a revolt with all the rest of the sharks and just said, if this stays in next season, we're all out. Yeah. And so they got rid of that. I think after season 2, they got rid of that. But anyway, So we had this onerous contract in front of us,
Right.
and we're like, hey, I want to be on the show because it's, it means, it's like the Super Bowl of small business, right? I want to go and see if I'm gonna, win. And so but we have this contract, and so we brought in a consultant and said, all right, based off of what you know of the show and all of your research and stuff like that, and the air time that we're going to get and stuff like that, what is the value to FlexScreen? Like how much would we be turning down? And he did his thing. He came back. He's like, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million of advertising value that you're getting through the lifetime of this. That's through the repeat, the reruns and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, we're probably going to sign the contract.
Well, and you know what though? Kudos to you that, I feel like with friends of mine that are business owners, a lot of times they don't always see the value of advisors or lawyers and they do something. They I don't want to spend the money, right? I don't want to, but you like spending that money, and consultants are not cheap, to get someone to come in and go, to really kind of paint that picture. And you really need that. You need that stamp sometimes to go. And by the way, probably 15 million is probably low.
It's probably low. Honestly, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. If I had to throw the number out, I mean, just prime time that to get on for. And by the way, it's not like it's going to end. They're going to resell that show. I mean, it's going to be around that show. Your show is going to be around for a very long time. And then I think you went back on the show again. Right. So, I mean, it's easily in the 20 or $30 million. And then just to be able to have that logo with the business connected forever. I mean, there's probably a few $1 million just in that, right? Absolutely. I mean, just to have that logo attached to you. So it's like a stamp of approval, right? It's like,
it is. And you talk about the people not wanting to spend money on, whether it's consultants or whoever looking at your business from the outside. This is gonna blow you away. Shark Tank on staff has a business consultant that will work with you. So as you're preparing your valuation and you're looking at what you're going to ask for and all that stuff, there is this person that Shark Tank pays, and they have been around since season 1. They brought them in right after season 1. So we'll call it season 2 through current. It is available to you at zero cost. Zero cost. All you have to do is take the time.
Sure.
90% of the companies that go on the show do not use him. Do not use him. I'm like, that is insane to me, because we were going in with a completely different ask that we ended up going in with, because we didn't understand the show, right? And we also didn't understand, how they look at things. Sure. We spent a couple of hours with him, and Shark Tank's a game. I don't know if you and your listeners, understand that, but Shark Tank's a game and has rules. And one of the rules, and I had no idea, I had watched the show in the past, but one of the rules is whatever you ask for as far as cash, you can't leave with less than that. Like if you ask for $400,000, it's not like somebody can make you a deal for $200,000.
Okay,
you have to leave with 400. They have to make a deal for 400,000. They can give you loans. They can do all these different things, but it
has to hit that number.
Has to hit that number. They can ask for a crazy valuation versus what you're doing, but it has to hit that number. If we wouldn't have worked with him, we would have had no idea of that. And so as we were looking at what we were asking, he's like, look, because we were up over $1 million is what we were asking for. And he's like, you don't want to do that because you have to leave with $1 million. And we were actually the first, we were like, I was the second person that pitched for the entire season. And so, and he was like, hey, you're in the first round of people that are going out there. The Sharks typically have a number in their head that they want to spend this season.
Right.
And so if you go in, somebody has to make a deal with you for $1 million.
Right.
Like Mark Cuban has more money than God, but Damon doesn't. Right. And so for Damon to make a deal for $1 million, he's like, a lot of his nut for that season is gone.
Right.
So you need to get in lower. But it's just crazy. And then even while he's like, look, I can't tell you what your valuation should be, but I can tell you how they look at this, because you're not going to have a lot of time for them to like really go over financials. And I'm like, so we got through this whole thing, spent a ton of time with him. He was so helpful. I'm like, why don't people do this with you?
Sure.
He goes, they don't want me to tell them that their baby is ugly.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. People don't want the bad news, right?
They don't want the bad news.
Yeah.
And even the people that I talk to, because when you go out there, you're with a lot of the other people, right? And
Sure.
like I had lunch with other companies, and we were out there for a couple of days. And you talk to them like, hey, what's your valuation? You know, what are you asking for? Because that's a question everybody wants to ask. What are you asking for? Right. You're like, oh, well, I'm asking for, you know, again, some of these companies were $500,000 for 1%. And I'm making this up, right? But $500,000 for 1%. Oh, well, great. What are your sales? Oh, we sold $50,000 worth. Like, what? Like, what makes your company worth that much? You know? And they're like, well, that's just what we think. Like, did you work with the consultant? No, we didn't work with the consultant. We want somebody else to tell us what our company's worth. We know what it's worth. I'm like, oh, you're one of those people that are going to go get embarrassed.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's why I said earlier, like, I think some people go on the show thinking like they just want the exposure for marketing, but they don't realize when it goes bad and someone tries to break down their business, it devalues them. It devalues their brand. Yeah. One thing, you know, the guy with Brain came in, he had a great product, and it just, they couldn't come to a number, and, you know, it ended up working out. But more often than not, most people are overvaluing their business. Their numbers are not right. So when I heard that a lot of the deals don't actually happen all the way through, it makes sense because they're probably fudging the numbers coming into that meeting. They ink a deal, and then they open up the books and they find out, guess what? It's not as exciting of a product. It's not profiting as much, you know, whatever the case may be. So, especially in the early stages. Joe, so kind of to wrap, because we're hitting our number here. Thank you so much for your time. Super interesting for me, and just excited to, what's your life as running a pretty big operation now? What's your day-to-day like? You know, obviously the podcast Self-Made Millionaire Tips, you're a millionaire now. Maybe you were before, but now you're, you know, I'm sure you're hitting some pretty high numbers. What is it like for you day to day? Wake up, managing people. I know you do content. Are you looking at other investments? Like what's your normal day to day business day like?
So we went through a transition about 2 years ago. We brought in COO that's managing all the manufacturing, and he's been around for a little bit longer than 2 years, but in the last 2 years I've started handing over a lot of control to him.
Okay.
So that, because we saw my role needing to change. You know, so you know, becoming more of working for the business rather than working in the business, right? So more strategic and leadership things rather than you know, oh crap, where's Joe? We have this problem, and he needs to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an oh crap moment that they need me now, like something is
really
like
wrong.
A bomb went off somewhere, right?
Yeah,
like
right,
things are getting handled well, you know, down the line.
Sure.
So I'm certainly in, you know, I have a couple of direct reports now, and they run whole divisions within FlexScreen, and so that's my main point of contact, is meeting with them, or not meeting with them, but talking with them.
Sure.
You know, we still act like a small company in a lot of ways. You know, we still like each other, and we're all still in the same office. So there's just a lot of impromptu meetings, not necessarily scheduled meetings.
Sure.
So, you know, talking with them, talking about, you know, what is, you know, we like to talk about this a lot. It's important to us that we're playing chess when the rest of the world is playing checkers, right? So we're trying to think 3 or 4 moves down the road, and the only way that we can do that if somebody is out from standing there looking at it from the outside looking
Sure.
in. You know, like I don't know the names of all of our employees. I just won't. I used to, right? I could go out there and any one of our manufacturing plants and say, hey, Bill, how are you today?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, if I'm worried about if Bill got paid this Friday or not,
Right.
I can't do my job. It's just that simple. So I'm more of a coach now in a lot of ways. More strategic, more of like, hey, what's the play that we're calling when this happens?
Mm-hmm.
But then also doing a lot of, you know, as we're growing, what we're realizing is that the culture that we feel is so valuable to us, you know, this aggressive, you know, aggressive sales, aggressive growth, all those types of things needs protection, and it needs cultivated more than it did in the past, because I used to have contact with everybody all the time. And so you can't get around me without getting excited about what we're doing.
Right.
But as not as many people are around me anymore, I have to find ways of making sure that that culture continues to flourish, because we think that that's one of our assets. And so, my meeting, so we have staff meetings on Wednesday. I just literally last week made the announcement like, hey, I am doing what we're going to call like an all staff meeting. So that's all of my leadership and all of my corporate team all together once a month to talk about things, more cultural things than day to day. Like our COO and our head of admin, they all have their own meetings on that Wednesday that I don't have to be a part of anymore. And I'm actually rarely a part of those anymore. And so I don't want people to see me come into the room and think, oh my gosh, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Oh, why is Joe part of these meetings? Like, no. We're going to have a meeting that's mine, and we're going to talk about why you should be excited about working here, and how exciting our path forward is. And let me give you a little glimpse to some of these things that we're doing. And so we're kind of going down that path now of that being my role. But then, of course, the bigger you are, somebody has to deal with investors, and somebody has to deal with banks, and somebody has to deal with all of those high level, C-suite type of meetings. And, right now that has become more of my day to day is dealing with that stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think you're right. The culture and the passion and the energy has to come from the top down. Right. And, you continuing that to influence people that work for you, that we're doing this and this is why we're doing it. And really that is really important. And I found that, if you lose that, if you're not engaged, there's times where you go up and down with engagement with your employees, but on those things, I think whenever I'm always engaged, the business always does better. Whenever I'm, giving those, sometimes someone needs a pep talk or someone, there's certain times that, people get in a rut, salespeople, I'm sure you're salespeople, it happens. You have to jump on the phone and try to ignite that again. So it's a big part of when you have a big organization and really moving that engine forward. At the beginning, it was small and now you're more like an ocean liner. And so, there's a lot of moving pieces, but I'm sure at the end of the day, your inertia is moving everything forward. Last question, because, Shark Tank, everyone's asking about Shark Tank. Lori, what do you think her biggest attribute has been? What's the biggest thing she's done for you? And I'm sure it's continuing, as the business goes, but what do you think's been the biggest thing, the biggest help to you in your partnership with her?
The biggest thing, first of all, her and her team, they're brilliant marketers to homeowners. And so, we are really good selling B2B and helping people understand B2B type of things. And like, hey, Mr. Window Manufacturer, here's all of the, here's all the positive attributes of our product that help you overcome all these issues. I don't think like a homeowner, you know what I mean? So I just give you an example. We were doing our displays for Home Depot, and all of our displays said, just flex the screen and it pops right in, right? It was kind of, I'm kind of generalizing, but that was the directions, flex the screen. And Lori looked at it and she's like, what the heck are you talking about flexing the screen? She's like, I understand it because I'm there, but if somebody's walking by this and picks this up and has never seen your screen before, they have no idea what flex the screen means.
Right.
You need to use homeowner words. So squeeze the sides together, or, like things like that. And so she's been a tremendous help from that side, like even changing some of the wording of our website and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it is so important. You have to have that person that's on the outside that is just seeing your flaws. So we put blinders on. We do. We internally, we desperately try to eradicate those and get rid of them and break them away, but they're still there because I have a perception of my world that I can't break. It just is what it is. So having that outside person looking at this going and having the guts to say you're messing up here, right? Which it's amazing when a company gets to a certain point, nobody wants to tell the CEO that he's wrong anymore, right? Wrong. I hate to say it, especially if you're paying somebody to do it. And so to have somebody that is willing to do that for you, and make no mistake, they're doing it for you, not to you, is a really, really valuable asset. And so she has acted in that way for us, which is invaluable. So
And
That's
it's
probably
someone
the
you
biggest asset.
it's someone you respect too, which is
Exactly.
right, because you know she's made it, and so you know she's not going to give you insight unless she thinks it's valuable and it's going to help, and you guys are partners, and you know having that kind of relationship is amazing. You know, I remember when you were saying that, it reminded me the first time someone told me, like in emails, when you do it, when you look at like what level reading it should be, someone told me like the best is probably 7th and 8th grade reading is what you want to shoot. And my mind sort of blew, you know, because we're sending emails to adults, but you know, you want it in a language that people can understand, which I think is what Lori sort of
Exactly.
did for you guys.
Yep.
So, Joe, thank you so much. Love your business. So exciting. Really happy that you joined us here and on Self-Made Millionaire Tips. And I'm sure there's more. Is there another product or something else coming out that we should know about, or you don't want to tell me, or is there anything exciting new?
We're working on some stuff. We're working on a sliding patio door screen that is around the flex screen technology. So,
cool.
But yeah, a lot of window stuff we're working on now. We're gonna turn some other products in the window and door industry kind of on their head a little bit too. So we're gonna have some fun and disrupt more industries within our industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I didn't sign an NDA, so I'm no, yeah, just joking.
We'll keep it secret between the two of us and your millions of listeners. So.
Exactly. All right, Joe. Thanks so much spending the time. I know you're busy, and good luck with the business, and hope to talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.